The last thing Kevin said to me was a joke about maple syrup. Real maple syrup, not the fake stuff, he reminded me with that crooked grin as he kissed Ava on the forehead. He waved goodbye from the doorway, dress shirt, untucked coffee in hand, and promised to be back in time for her bedtime story. 2 hours later, he was gone. The call came from his assistant, Amanda. Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. "Emily, it's Kevin. He collapsed during a meeting. They're taking him to St. Luke's now." I don't remember hanging up. Just the sound of my car keys hitting the hardwood floor as I fumbled for my shoes. I broke every speed limit between our house and the hospital, whispering Ava's name like a prayer and Kevin's like a plea. By the time I got there, they had already stopped trying. "Massive heart attack. Nothing we could have done," a nurse explained gently, as if that made anything better. I sat with his body for an hour, waiting for him to wake up to smirk and tell me this was some awful mix-up. But he never did. At home, the house felt colder, smaller, too quiet. Ava was still at daycare. I didn't even know how I was going to tell her. I needed my parents. I needed someone to tell me what to do, to hold me, to say something that made this real but survivable. I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. I could hear music and laughter in the background. "Emily, can I call you back in a bit? We're in the middle of Chloe's birthday brunch." "Mom," I choked out. "Kevin died this morning. He had a heart attack." There was a pause. Then, oh my God. "Sweetheart, can this wait until later? Chloe's got everyone here." I didn't reply. I couldn't. I hung up. That night, Ava curled into me on the couch, not yet knowing what had happened, just sensing something enormous had cracked inside me. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be completely alone, even with family still alive. We met in the back row of Econ 101 at the University of Georgia. I was 19, hopeless with numbers, and he was the TA with an unfair smile and a beat-up leather notebook full of patience. He never made me feel stupid, even when I absolutely was, especially about depreciation curves. That was the first thing I fell in love with, the way Kevin made hard things feel possible. We dated all through college. He proposed in the most Kevin way, quietly, privately hiding the ring inside the front cover of my thesis printout. I said yes, with ink still smudged on my fingers. We got married at 24, while most of our friends were still figuring themselves out. People told us we were too young, but Kevin would always say, "When you find your person, why waste time?" We wasted nothing. Ava didn't come easily. 3 years of heartbreak. 2 miscarriages, 1 failed round of IVF, and more ultrasounds than I could count. I had almost given up. Then one Tuesday morning, 2 pink lines appeared. Kevin cried harder than I did. The pregnancy was rough. I was on bed rest for 10 weeks, and Kevin worked from home, turning our small kitchen into a makeshift office and gourmet breakfast station. Every morning, he brought me food shaped like something ridiculous: a giraffe, a smiley face, a sun. Ava's favorite was the dinosaur. He read baby books out loud to my belly like it was a bedtime ritual. "She's already smarter than both of us," he'd whisper. I can feel it. Even after Ava was born, nothing changed. He never missed a doctor's appointment, never forgot a birthday recital or parent-teacher conference. His calendar looked like a war map of color-coded sticky notes, soccer practices, grocery runs, preschool art day. All for her. There were signs, of course. Tightness in his chest after big client meetings, the shortness of breath on stairs. The night I found him massaging his left arm and brushing it off with a smile. "Just tension," he said. "You worry too much." That morning, the one that would become the last, he flipped a pancake into a misshapen T-Rex, kissed Ava's nose, and handed me a note with real maple syrup underlined twice. I laughed. And then he left. If I had known, I would have held him tighter, told him I'd never stop needing him, told him the world would fall apart without him in it. The morning of the funeral was insultingly beautiful. Sunlight poured through the kitchen window like it didn't know anything had happened. Ava insisted on wearing her blue dress, the one Kevin always said made her look like a princess. I braided her hair with trembling fingers, just like he used to, and kissed the top of her head when she asked if Daddy would see us from the sky. He'll see everything I said, trying not to break. We arrived at the chapel early. Kevin's colleagues were already there, most of them in dark suits with red-rimmed eyes. His mother, Diane, hugged me so tightly, I thought I might crumble. His father, Jim, looked years older than when I'd last seen him. They both took turns kneeling beside Ava, whispering small stories about Kevin, the time he brought home a squirrel, the way he used to sing in the shower. She smiled barely. My parents and Chloe were supposed to be there early too. But 20 minutes before the service began, I got a text from my mother, running late. Traffic was terrible. Chloe couldn't find anything appropriate to wear. They walked in just as the music started. My mother gave me a brief staged hug, her perfume swallowing the moment. Chloe offered a weak sorry before sliding into the front row, eyes already on her phone. My father gave me a nod, then leaned over to my Uncle Doug and whispered something about estate paperwork. They sat through the eulogies with bored expressions, my father checking his watch and Chloe tapping at her screen with bright pink nails. I couldn't look at them when I stood to speak. I looked at Ava instead, so small in the second row holding Diane's hand. I spoke about Kevin's loyalty, his awful jokes, his obsession with real maple syrup, about how he never let a single person in his life feel unseen. And as I said that, my gaze drifted toward my family, who couldn't even be bothered to show up on time for his goodbye. Later at the reception in our backyard, I found my father near the buffet table telling someone Kevin had a good policy. Emily and Ava will be set, like it was a stock tip. That was the moment something inside me stopped reaching for them. Not out of anger, out of clarity. It was a Tuesday afternoon when they showed up, no call, no warning. I saw their car through the window as I was folding Ava's pajamas. My stomach tightened. Margot and Dale walked in like it was any normal visit. My mother had a pie in one hand and a faint smile stretched too tight. My father's eyes scanned the living room like he was appraising the furniture. Ava's at school, she asked, stepping inside before I could answer. Good, we wanted to talk privately. The pie stayed on the counter untouched. I made coffee out of habit, listening to them chat about traffic and the new grocery store renovation, as if we weren't still grieving, as if Kevin hadn't just been buried under fresh soil 10 days ago. When we sat there was a silence that felt rehearsed. We've been thinking. My father started placing his mug precisely on the coaster, like he was laying down a chess piece about your situation. My situation, I asked flatly. He cleared his throat. Financially, now that Kevin's passed, we assume the life insurance has come through. I blinked. It's not something I've been focused on. Well, you should be, my mother chimed in. You're alone now, managing everything. And your father and I were not getting any younger. Health insurance, medication, retirement, it's also expensive these days. And Chloe's been struggling, she added. Her art commissions aren't what they used to be. I waited. The silence made the room louder than their voices. We think, my father said carefully, it would be fair to consider sharing some of the insurance payout, maybe 50%. To help the family, I stared at them. My husband died. And you're here asking me for money? No, sweetheart, my mother said quickly. We're asking you to help your family, like we've helped you. You weren't there when I needed you, I said quietly. Not when I called. Not when I broke. Don't be emotional, my father said, waving his hand. This is about practicality. I stood up. Then, practically speaking, you should leave. The pie remained on the counter, untouched. Just like their empathy. They called it a family meeting. My parents phrased it like a gathering to clear the air and set healthy expectations. But when I pulled into their driveway and saw Uncle Brad's truck and Aunt Valerie's silver sedan, I knew it was a tribunal. They wanted an audience. Ava clutched the manila envelope in her lap, the entire drive refusing to tell me what was inside. It's for them, she said, eyes focused out the window. Me and Daddy made it, kind of. I didn't ask more. I was too focused on not unraveling. My mother opened the door wearing pearls and a rehearsed smile. Emily, Ava, come in. Everyone's in the living room. The room was full of familiar faces, some curious, some cautious. My father stood as if presiding over a boardroom. Chloe sat cross-legged on the arm of the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Thank you for coming, my father said with all the warmth of a tax form. We'd like to discuss a fair financial arrangement for the family moving forward. I remained standing. You can say whatever you need to in front of Ava. My mother frowned. Emily, this isn't appropriate for... If it's not appropriate for her to hear, then it's not appropriate to ask. Silence. My father launched into a breakdown of percentages, citing how they'd supported me through college, helped with our first down payment, and how Chloe deserved something too. Chloe didn't even look up. Then Ava stepped forward. She walked across the rug, stood in front of her grandparents, and held out the envelope with both hands. I made this for you, she said. It's your bill. They blinked. My father opened the envelope and unfolded a single sheet of paper covered in Ava's neat printing and crayon drawings. At the top it read, Bill for real love and support. Being there when Daddy died, $0 not provided. Helping Mommy when she cried, $0 not provided. Hugging me when I missed Daddy, $0 not provided. Being real grandparents priceless, not received. At the bottom in red crayon. Total owed $0. That's why you came, right? Ava asked. For something, my father's hands trembled. My mother blinked too fast. No one said a word. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be small, honest, and handed over by someone brave enough to speak when adults won't. The room was still. My father sat frozen, Ava's paper trembling slightly in his hands. My mother blinked at it like the words were written in a foreign language she couldn't decipher. Chloe shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. No one moved. No one spoke. I didn't wait. I reached for Ava's hand and she took it without looking back. Together we turned toward the door. No slammed fists, no screaming, just footsteps against the carpet and the sound of 1,000 unspoken truths settling like dust. Behind me, I heard the crinkle of the paper as my father folded it carefully like it was delicate. Maybe sacred, maybe shameful. Emily, my mother's voice called out uncertain. I didn't stop, I didn't flinch. At the front door, Ava looked up at me. Was that okay? She whispered. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. It was more than okay, I said. It was brave, and it was enough. She nodded solemnly, and for a moment, I saw Kevin in the tilt of her chin, in the steadiness of her gaze. We walked out of that house, not with victory, not with vengeance, but with something rarer. We walked out with clarity. I no longer needed them to apologize, to approve, or to pretend. I no longer needed a family who only shows up when there's something to gain. And most importantly, I no longer needed to beg people to love us right. Some goodbyes aren't loud. They don't echo in slammed doors or angry words. Some are quiet, unmistakable, like the soft click of a door closing behind you when you know in your bones you won't be opening it again. Not because of hate, because of peace. By the time we got home, my phone had already lit up with 12 messages. Emily, we didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You embarrassed us in front of family. Call us back and we'll talk like adults. Then came the guilt-tinged ones. We raised you. Family helps family. You think you're better than us now? And finally the one from Chloe. You've always been dramatic. Now you're just selfish. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Ava was in the kitchen coloring quietly, humming a lullaby Kevin used to sing to her. I stepped into the hallway and called Thomas. He picked up on the second ring. Emily. They're trying to come after the life insurance, I said, my voice flat. Again. I heard him sigh through the receiver. Everything Kevin set up is airtight. He designated you and Ava as sole beneficiaries. They can't touch it. They're talking like they can guilt me into it. They can try. Doesn't mean they'll succeed. He paused. Emily. Kevin planned all of this for a reason. To protect you both. Don't let them undo that. I hung up and stared at the ceiling for a long minute. Then I opened my contacts, scrolled to Mom, Dad, and Chloe, and blocked them one by one. That night, as I tucked Ava into bed, she pulled the blanket to her chin and looked at me with eyes too wise for 5 years old. Did I do the wrong thing? She asked quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed. Why would you think that? Because they're mad. And sometimes people say you're bad when they're mad. I reached for her small hand. Sweetheart, standing up for yourself doesn't make you bad. It makes you brave. Daddy would be so proud of you. Her face relaxed. She turned her head into the pillow, and within minutes she was asleep, still clutching the crayon she'd used to write priceless, not received. I sat in the dark for a while after that, listening to the silence of a house that no longer owed anyone an explanation. And for the first time in weeks, that silence felt like peace. Matt showed up with a suitcase, a worn hoodie, and 2 tubs of Kevin's favorite coffee blend. Figured I'd stay for a bit, he said, hugging me tightly at the door. Unless you want to be alone, I didn't. And I told him so without shame. He slipped into our days like he'd always belonged there, cooking pancakes that didn't quite resemble dinosaurs, but made Ava giggle anyway, fixing the leaky faucet Kevin had been meaning to get to, and sitting with me on the porch at night, in comfortable wordless company. Kevin's parents began calling Ava every morning before school, and again before bedtime. Diane read her bedtime stories over FaceTime. Jim helped her with addition problems on napkins held up to the screen. I hadn't realized how much we all needed that someone showing up just to stay. At the therapist's office, I sat across from a woman named Karen, who didn't blink when I said, "I don't think I'm grieving right." She listened without rushing to fix it. Some days I cried through the whole session. Other days I just stared at the bookshelf behind her, trying to remember what calm used to feel like. Ava started art class on Saturdays. She didn't speak much at first, just painted in soft strokes. But after the 3rd week, she brought home a drawing of a sky with one bright star and whispered, "That one's Daddy." It doesn't move, but it's always there. Sometimes at night I found folded pieces of paper under her pillow, crayon letters to Kevin. Today I got glue in my hair. I laughed, or Mom got sad and I hugged her. Did you see I never moved them? They were her messages, and maybe somehow he was still reading them. Grief didn't loosen its grip quickly. His shoes still sat by the front door. His cologne still lived in the closet. Some mornings I reached for my phone to text him something funny and froze halfway. The ache hadn't left. It had just shifted, settled deeper, quieter. But between the aches, something else had started to bloom. Not a new life, not yet, but a new beginning, a seed, a root, one that might hold. It came in a plain white envelope with my name written in my mother's cursive. No return address, no stamp. Just hand-delivered, slipped through the slot sometime after dark. I opened it in the kitchen while Ava painted suns at the table beside me. Emily. There's no excuse for how we acted. We let our pride, our fear, and our selfishness speak louder than love. We failed you. We failed Ava. We failed Kevin's memory. There are no requests in this letter, no expectations. Only hope. That one day we might deserve to be in your lives again. Mom and Dad. There were no justifications, no mention of money, not even a half-hearted excuse about misunderstanding or grief. Just ink on paper. And silence. I slid the letter across the table to Matt that evening. He read it twice, then leaned back in his chair. "Well," he said, exhaling slowly, "it's a start." "But is it real?" I asked. He shrugged. "Maybe. But trust isn't something you write down and mail. It's what you build, over time, with your hands." I nodded, folding the letter neatly, then tucking it in a drawer, not the trash, not the fridge, somewhere in between. Like the space between forgiveness and forgetting. Later that night, as I tucked Ava in, she asked, "Do you think they're sorry?" "I think they want to be," I said. And that, for now, would have to be enough. Kevin would have been 38 today. Ava and I drove out to Lake Hartwell just after sunrise, thermos of cocoa in one hand, a folded blanket in the other. It was his favorite place, a quiet dock, a ripple of breeze, and enough space to breathe. We sat cross-legged at the edge of the pier, our reflections gently swaying in the water below. Ava reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. She didn't say anything, just smoothed it over her knee and placed it beside her. It was another invoice, different from the first one. This time it read, "To Daddy, missing you every day, loving you always, remembering you forever until all of me." She pressed it down with a smooth stone and looked out across the lake. "I think the envelope helped them," she said softly. "Grandma and Grandpa." I blinked at the horizon. "Maybe," she looked up at me, "but it helped you more, right?" I smiled, brushing a hair from her cheek. "Yeah, it helped me stop waiting for people to be someone they never were. It helped me see what we actually have." We sat in silence for a while, just the two of us wrapped in layers and memory. The wind shifted slightly, picking up the edge of the paper before it settled again like even the lake wanted to read it. Ava leaned into me and I wrapped my arm around her. "We're going to be okay, right, Mom?" she asked. "We already are," I said. And when we stood to leave, we didn't look back. The water stayed behind us, calm and steady. We walked hand in hand toward the car, toward home, toward something new. Not what we'd lost, but what we'd learned to grow.